Hey there, welcome back to Manotick StringWorks and another project. So just hope you can take a moment to like and subscribe. Alright, so an interesting one here. Client dropped off some parts and pieces put together. Let's have a look. Well, that's nice. So that's a Fender Stratocaster body, a Vintera 60's model in ice blue metallic. Classic Strat. And a nice vintage maple neck to go with that. Some locking tuners too. We'll have a look at those later. The dreaded truss rod in the heel. Two packs of strings, Ernie balls, 9.5s. What else have we got there? So this has been partially assembled, of course, right? The body is all the components, the neck has the tuners. These parts were purchased off a website called Stratosphere. I'll put a link in the description. It's the trem bar, that nice little mint color, same as the pickguard. Couple of things left here. We've got a backplate, again in that mint color, to match the pickguard. It's from Music Lily. I've used them before. They have good Strat components, actually. And the last thing, I believe, is a neck plate with the Fender F logo. Yep, there we go. Alright, so we've got everything to put this together. Should be a fun little project. I like kit builds, and these are nice parts, of course. They're Fender parts, so this should go together pretty smoothly, I would think. Oh, technical difficulties. No. So let's get started. So get the body on the bench. I always like to check the electronics. Make sure everything's working okay. 5-way switch. Position 1 is at the bottom, so on the right side of the switch. Position 5 is at the top. Everything was fine here. The output jack was tight, no scratchy noises. Always nice. So you can see that the body was made in September 2020. Let's have a look at that neck. Really nice maple, that vintage tint. Frets are nice. Look like, I want to say medium jumbos. Pretty big. Nice headstock. Vintage locking tuners. I've never used these before. I'm anxious to try them out. Yeah, there's that heel truss rod adjustment. Not a fan of that. Hopefully won't have to adjust it. So I'll check the neck, make sure that it's straight. I don't know how long it's been sitting like that, or if the truss rod was properly tensioned. So using a notched gauge, 25.5-inch Fender scale. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Didn't have to adjust anything, so that's good. Sometimes they're not tensioned, when they're shipped or whatever, and they could sort of lose their shape. Alright, we'll take the standard sort of no-name neck plate off. because we're going to use the Fender logoed one. This is a simple DIY for a lot of people. You can put that on your Squires or your Made in Mexicos that don't have a Fender logo. Very simple. They're not expensive, you know, $10 to $20 depending where you buy it. Just makes it look nicer. So a matching mint green backplate. Not that you see the backplate too much. Still, it'll look nicer. Loosen the screws with a manual screwdriver, then use a drill driver like that. Goes a little faster. Be careful. Standard spring setup. 3 springs. Ground wires properly attached. The trem, like the bridge is just sort of sitting off the body. Not much. I'll tighten that right down. So it'll be a synchronized trem. So the neck's from 2020 as well, but a little earlier, July 2020. Both parts are made in Mexico. The neck fits the pocket really nicely. It's a good sign. What do we got left there? Oh yeah, that's the neck plate. So I'm just going to prep the bench here. Because I have a little foam pad, it raises the body up, which is actually perfect when you're setting a neck onto the body. So I'll just put a cloth down, press the neck into the pocket, and I'll just start a screw here, make sure it seems like it's lined up and that these screws will fit in the holes. Sometimes aftermarket stuff doesn't fit for some reason, so it does. So we'll get that new neck plate on. Because everything's lying pretty flat, this should work nicely. Again, I'm just going to, I set the driver to a low torque setting, like 5, so it'll stop. Then I'll increase it. And get the screws flush but not tight. Of course, finish off by hand with the right size Phillips screwdriver. Give them a good tighten. Don't have to be like super crazy tight, but nice and tight so the neck doesn't wobble around. Looks better already with that Fender logo. Yeah, just give it a little check. Everything seems like it's fitting nicely. So now I'm going to check the neck angle in relation to the bridge. So using a long straight edge, I want to see how much adjustment we have with the bridge, right? So the underside of that straight edge should just glide over the top of the bridge saddle. So these are raised up already, so I'm going to lower them down pretty much all the way. And as long as the straight edge can pass over the top of the saddle, and that means there's lots of adjustment going up, right? So you're never going to go down from there, but you're going to go up. So the neck angle should be just right. So that's a good thing. I don't need to put a shim in. I wasn't really expecting to have to put a shim in, but sometimes you do. Yeah, so that'll work out nicely. So using a fret rocker, just going to check and see if the frets are level to each other. Aren't any high spots. Using the different lengths on the fret rocker, you span 3 frets. And if you get a rock, then you know the middle one is a little high. This was good. Nothing appreciable anywhere to worry about. So I thought I'd leave this full regular speed here because all you ASMR types are going to enjoy peeling back the film on the pickguard. Just using a little wooden stick here so I don't scratch anything. Here we go. Of course, a Fender pickguard has a whole bunch of screws. It's got 3 knobs, pickup selector. So sometimes you have to remove all the screws to get the plastic off. You definitely have to remove the tone knobs, volume knob. And be careful with a little utility knife if you need to take it off. But yeah, there's a lot of screws, and that plastic is annoying if it sticks under that. I hate getting guitars in that have that. I did ask the client if he wanted me to do it though, because some people like to do it themselves, and some people like to leave that plastic film on for as long as they can. I know I've been guilty of that on my cell phones. Alright, we're close to getting the strings on. So I like to mark where the claw was positioned originally. Whether I go back there or not, who knows. But I'm going to tighten this trem right down. A little bit out of sequence here, sorry about that. But just checking to see if that trem is going to pop up, but it won't. So that's good. So let's get back in sequence. Again, I like to put the guitar on my bench using the bench vise, and it's a lot easier to pull these through a Strat from behind, I find. You can do it on your bench, you don't have to do this, but on your lap, whatever, however you like to do it. But I've got the tools, so I find it's a little easier to do this way. Alright, so this guitar has some really cool vintage style locking tuners, which I've never used these ones before, so it's a little different. There is no button on the back, so what you do is you pull the string through, relatively tight, not super tight, and then you just start to tune it, and it's going to grab. At some point you're going to feel it grab the string. There we go. And that's it. That's how it locks down. There's a little screw slot on top, but you don't need to use that. So you just tighten it up. When you want to get the string out, you loosen the string. And the little screw slot's there only if it's, for some reason, it's caught, like it's grabbed into the string, so you would use that. But otherwise, you just tighten or loosen the tuning key, and that'll get the string out. So these work really well. I'm very impressed. So for the wound string or the plain strings, same thing. This one took a few more turns because it was a plain string, a little thinner. But yeah, you'll feel it grab, and it's on there. So with like most locking strings, because there's no wrappings around the tuning post, I like to leave the ends a little longer, just in case there's an issue and I have to pull the string back through or something. Now this string tree was really screwed down flush to the headstock, so the client asked me if we could raise that up, and I happen to have a little metal spacer just for that with a little longer screw. Helps with the break angle off the back of the nut, and honestly, Strats usually have at least one string tree, sometimes two. I'm not sure why, one or two. I would probably put two, to be honest, on most Strats. just leave the E and the A string without. Especially with locking tuners like this, you can't wind the string down on the post. So I find that the break angle is a little higher maybe than I would like to see. But we'll see if that causes an issue when we start to do the setup. I don't think it will, but sometimes you get an issue where the string likes to buzz a little bit because there's not enough. It buzzes in the nut slot, especially if it's a little loose in the nut slot, if you don't have enough break angle. Alright, so yeah, here, just trim them back a little bit. Otherwise they get pretty stabby. And now that I've got the strings on, again, sorry, it was out of sequence before, but I'll just tighten this down a little more. I noticed when I was trying to tune it up there that it was starting to move a little bit. So this will be a synchronous trem. So there you go, it's not going out of tune or moving anymore. Alright, so we'll tune up. Give the strings a good stretching, especially the wound strings. I like to do this 2 or 3 times while I'm doing the setup. Every string's a little different, how long it takes for them to get in tune or stay in tune once you've made a string change. Usually depends on how much you play initially. Some are better than others. It's also, while I'm doing this, I also check for string buzz too. That'll let me know if the neck relief is off or the string action is too low. Again, I'm not sure what I was drinking, but out of sequence a bit. Just showing you the neck radius. So this isn't a real vintage style neck at 7 1/4. It's more of a modern Fender at 9 1/2. Still a little more rounded than some people like. Some people like 10 or 12, like a Les Paul would be 12 in most cases. Alright, so we'll check the neck relief. So 12 is, that's perfectly acceptable. Fender actually says 10 thousandths for this radius of neck. And in this case, it was fine. So again, I'll check it over the next day or two while it sits on the bench. Fender also recommends 4/64 at the 17th fret. I find that a little low. Depends on the guitar, how the frets are done. This is a nice guitar, good fret job, so it should be fine. But somewhere between 4 and 5/64 is perfectly acceptable. Again, as long as all of them are at the same height. So if you do 4, make them all 4. But if you find the E string or the A string is buzzing, as an example, at that, and you raise it up to 4 1/2 64s, well, make sure you make everything 4 1/2. 5 is probably the highest I would do a Stratocaster. Certainly, if someone's a real heavy strummer or hard player, then 5 would be probably preferable. Now, just going to go up and down the fingerboard, check each string, make sure there isn't any buzzing in the open and fretted positions. You can do this on the bench flat, or you can hold it like this. I'll do it both ways. Sometimes something pops up, but most of the time it's the same. So intonation, checking the open string, the harmonic at the 12th fret, and the fretted note at the 12th fret. Again, intonation is a relative game, especially with new strings. They don't always hold intonation well off the bat. But, in this case, it wasn't too bad. You can hear that buzzing in the open position. So I think we're going to raise the strings up just a touch, maybe like 1/2 64th. So that D string, just going to fix that one a little bit. Peterson Strobo Plus there is pretty accurate, you know, fine instrument, so it shows a lot on it. So between 18 and 22 thousandths at the first fret. This one was set up pretty well, like around 18. Yeah, that's about as low as I like to see it. You don't need it lower than that. Just going to avoid buzzing issues. So again, you check in the open position, shouldn't rattle. So pickup height, 1/8 on the bass side, 3/32 on the treble side. That's from the underside of the string to the top of the pole piece. You can see how these pole pieces are radiused, right, on this Strat. Pretty extremely, I think. Again, it's a starting point. You don't want it too close, that's for sure. And if you sink them way down into the body, well, you're just not going to hear anything. So start at these measurements and then fool around with it. Let's put it this way, you're not going to go wrong with these measurements. I'm going to take off that little piece of, that little yellow dot tape, right? Because there's a spring inside there which people lose all the time. So I like to make sure the trem is working. Yeah, it worked nicely. I could hear that the ground spring actually was catching, so I just sort of repositioned it, but that's fine. Yeah, there's a little spring in there that will fall out if you're not careful. I think it actually did there. I put it back in. I'll put that new backplate on. There's the plastic. A little magnetized screw tip. Makes it easy to grab those screws out of your bin. I always keep a little plastic bin there so that I can put all the parts I take off or I have to put on. Don't lose them. Don't let them flop around on your bench anywhere to scratch up the guitar. Alright, well, that's it. Really nice Fender Vintera. I'll trim those strings off before the customer comes to pick it up. But for now we're done. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more videos. Take care. Stay safe. Bye for now. See ya.